Hello, my name is Wakasa, and today we'll be discussing isolation and psychology. This video was inspired by a tangent I almost went on in my last video. This got me thinking, why Japan? I wanted to discuss how Japan's culture, being wacky and weird, could attract aliens. However, I made a point to discuss dehumanization, and I personally think a conversation like that would lead to othering. And Japan is not the only one. It is a common characteristic from any island population to be a bit different. Australia, Madagascar, even America are examples of islands that are different. And it all starts with Darwin. So Charles Darwin was the scientist that discovered evolution. However, there's apparently some documentation that some other person named Al-Jahiz also was documenting what would later be understood as evolution. But we know how it works in this world. If it's not discovered by a white man, then it's not truly discovered. He did research in the Galapagos Islands with all the different bird populations, and he began to notice patterns of the different beak types corresponding with the food and resources the birds had access to. Now, this is what led to us understanding that often populations of the same ancestral background, when they move to different environments, will evolve to look a bit different or behave a bit different so that they can better survive those different environments. And in the case of islands, that exacerbates it bigger because they are isolated. So I brought up Australia because I think Australia is actually the best example of animals evolving to better suit an environment. And in the case of Australia, that is a very harsh environment. So a lot of those animals are very harsh and very odd and wacky. I think koalas are the most normal, but they have don't they have two thumbs? That's weird. Kangaroos, they look normal now, but I bet when we first, not the Aboriginal people, but everyone who was a foreigner, an alien, that came to Australia and saw a kangaroo for the first time was like, what is that? And especially since they have the pouch, they are marsupial or whatever, they are a wacky, weird animal. The animal, a platypus, apparently is a mammal. It looks like a bird. Not only does it look like a bird, it lays eggs like a bird. But it's a mammal. That is weird. That is wacky. And I did bring up how Australia is a harsh environment. Outside of the animals that I can think off the top of my head, the spiders, probably the lizards, right? They are very harsh, scary animals. Every time I go, I want to go to Australia. Who wants to come with me? No one says they want to come with me because they're afraid of the spiders and all the different animals, because those animals were isolated once. They were isolated and they had to evolve in this harsh environment, and they're scary, and we are not familiar with those animals. So an outsider, an alien coming in would be like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I don't know how to interact with this alien. I don't know how to interact with this animal because I've never had to interact with this animal before. It's foreign. It's crazy, right? I also brought up Madagascar, though. Madagascar isn't the best example because they technically have always had interaction with mainland Africa. So they're not as isolated as Australia. And also, I said Australia, it's actually all of the Pacific Islands. I wouldn't be surprised if Hawaii's in there, but no, I'm thinking Papua New Guinea. Now, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, right? But every time I have learned about potential burial practices that have happened in Papua New Guinea, I am disturbed. And it makes sense that I'm disturbed, but not and most of the time when I hear a cultural aspect that I'm like, well, I don't vibe with that, I feel neutral. I don't feel neutral about it. And it bothers me because I'm just I'm not trying to tell you to stop. I genuinely wish I had never learned that that's what they did. They used to do, they might still do. It disturbs me. I'm like, oh, this is genuinely disturbing. Again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. At the end of the day, I don't think Christians should have showed up and told you, oh no, you have to start burying your dead. That's rude. You're that's not your business. It's not my business. It's not my business. And I think that's part of the reason why it's I need to stop thinking about it. Anyways, Madagascar. Examples are lemurs. I'm pretty sure lemurs are only in Madagascar. I could be wrong, but that's an example of those animals being unique because they somehow got separated and then they evolved and they become different. Lemurs. Because I don't know if they're a rat, a rodent, a raccoon. I don't know what they are. They look so distinct. They're their own thing. And then I brought up America. Now I will be discussing USA, 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 but I actually did mean like the concept of North and South America. Those continents are both of these continents are technically their own island. In my last video, I even brought it up. It's like apparently some frozen bridge they crossed, and then eventually that bridge melted, and then they got isolated, and now they're their own identity. And yeah, I literally said isolation. I think because in the back of my mind, I knew I was going to discuss this, right? One of the things that breaks my heart real bad is that there were mammoths in North America, meaning not only would we have African elephants and Asian elephants, we could have had American elephants. It breaks my heart real bad. And especially since we can see how African elephants differentiate from Asian elephants. And that is an example of how something of the same ancestral background moving and interacting with a new ecosystem, a new environment, evolved to better suit that environment, making them different from their ancestors. They're like two different distinct groups, right? And that's actually what happened with humans too. Like the reason why we have race and all the different phenotypes is because people moved out and they adapted to better suit their environment, right? We are animals. I think we sometimes do forget like human beings are living, breathing animals. We're just really hyper sentient, but like we are animals. In the case of America, we do have a couple of unique animals. We have different dog breeds. I specifically think of like Mexican dog breeds, like the Chihuahua, and then the one that was in Coco, but I never remember. That is a very unique, different looking dog. But now to discuss USA, USA, USA. There is good and bad with any concept. In the case of islands, I think it is a good thing that islands do create diversity because of the isolation, right? But also the isolation in difficult situations may breed characteristics and or breed sentiments that are dangerous. And I guess I'll go back to the Papua New Guinea thing. What was happening, right? What was happening in your environment that it caused y'all to evolve where you would do types of things like that? Like to point of my video, I want to discuss the good things about isolation, how it like causes, it makes diverse situations. I love that. Sometimes diverse situations are abusive, bad situations. America. I remember learning American history, and something that I used to hold on to, but now I'm more critical about, is that they were like, white people are so evil and vile in America because they sent their criminals, or Europe sent their criminals to America, and then they would just breed more violent, evil people. And I'm like, I hear you, because I know of like isolation in like harsh environments, and like the Pilgrims really struggled with like the first couple of years of their colonization, right? Harsh environment, also epigenetics. I do hear you, because like harsh environment means that you have to adapt to be a harsh person. But in general, human history wise, y'all were sending majority men, and men are socialized at the very least. I don't play too much about genetics because that's how it gets very eugenicsy, right? But in general, men are socialized to answer questions violently. I do recognize that they were sending all sorts of people to America, and because they are isolated, that did breed a culture of violence. I think a major part of that is the isolation, right? America has a history of isolationism. What? The Monroe Doctrine, meaning that whatever America was doing was our business and our business alone. And I think this is the main point of like my video. No man is an island for a reason. When you are isolated, you don't have outside forces that can technically check and balance you. So when you start slipping into some dangerous ideology, there's no one there to pull you out. Sometimes you can pull yourself out there, but you can't, like if it's you who's going down that path and you don't have the mind to be critical of every choice that you're making, see both sides, you're like, there's only one true answer. You start slipping into a dangerous culture. That's how I feel about America. I think part of the reason why American culture is honestly uniquely violent in comparison to Europe, but Europe has its problems, but specifically the white people in America are uniquely violent. Isn't just that theory about, oh, Europe sent all their criminals here. It is specifically the isolation gave leeway for them to evolve into harsher, more violent, more disturbing avenues of answering cultural questions, finding violent solutions, the isolation. Back to Japan. Japan also has a history of isolationism. And I do think maybe that's the point that I keep forgetting. Islands literally are symbolically isolation, right? Japan is just a country of a bunch of islands, right? This goes into my theory about yin and yang, right? Yin and yang, yin, black, yang, white, but there's also a depiction of yin being blue and yang being red. Japan's flag is one red dot. Yang, right? Yang is masculine, yang is patriarchy, is masculine, therefore capitalism is giving a bit of masculine. Of course, there's feminine and masculine in everything, right? Japan, the red dot. That sort of kind of symbolizes only yang, right? In the case of Japan's imperial past, also America has an imperial history. They have the rising sun imagery. And to me, that feels like not only they're not containing the yang energy anymore, it's more so like the concept of like something is about to blow up. And like, have you ever seen like in the TV show, the thing that was containing the like the nuclear or the bomb or like the thing that is supposed to contain and conceal the dangerous force starts to crack and then like light shoots out of it before it completely blows? That's how I see the Japanese imperial rising sun flag. It was Japan and it had a containment, it had a system that was working. Rising sun was them expanding, right? Conquering, colonizing. And it was like there were cracks in the system. It was about to explode. And then in that case, it would have been like Japan is a full red flag because it completely blew up because there was too much yang energy. That's how I think. But I don't know if that makes sense. But now I do want to like bring up some micro examples because I said man is not an island. No man is an island. And I'm really talking about communities, though, like communities can be personified. Hatalia. Communities can be personified as like a unit. And for that reason, it's like, I don't think communities should isolate themselves because again, if the community starts going down a path that is like dangerous and vile and they don't have other communities to pull them out of it and like give them context and give them checks and balances, right? Cults. Homeschool kids are a bit weird. Sorry. This connects to Leo energy, but I will have a conversation about Leo energy because it has to do with like Leo and Virgo specifically, but it's more so like their only social bubble is the home. Their friends are pretty much their siblings, their teachers, their mother, like there's a lack of diversity. And that's the thing where I was just like, yeah, like technically islands create diversity, but technically if they're only in that island, they are isolated, then it also is a lack of diversity. They only have that. It's like they just don't have a lot of diversity with social cues, like a lot of diverse like social interactions so that they can better learn or like better have better context about like how the world is multi-layered and all the different nuances because their only social life is in the home, for real. Their only real social life is at the home. There's actually truly a lack of diversity. I brought up Leo and the opposing sign is Aquarius. This is one of the Aquarius videos that I was supposed to get done. Islands, aliens, Aquarius. And I have brought up how opposing signs are literally the same thing. I like to think of like math axes, like the y-axis. If there's a -7, let's say +7, let's say at this situation, the +7 would be Aquarius. And then Leo would be the -7 down here at the y-axis, right? They are technically the same number, are they not? But technically they're different numbers because one is positive, one is negative. But they are the same number. They're expressing themselves differently, but it is in fact the same thing. So Leo reminds me of like that lack of diversity, and I do have a video planned to better explain myself. But Leo reminds me of incest. Something about like, there's only this circle, nothing out, right? It's just me. Or more so, maybe the best way to explain it is like how self-cest and incest often makes people uncomfortable because it's like low-key, it's too close, right? That's what Leo reminds me of. It is, I promise I'll explain it. And I also want to say it like this. every sign has aspects about themselves that are bad. There's good and bad with everything. Leo, I'm not saying that if you have a Leo placement, you're bound to do something incestuous. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that Leo at its worst is incestuous. Aquarius on the opposite side, right? Reminds me of diversity, because I was talking about how Leos remind me of foreigners traveling out, and how foreigner and alien are synonyms, right? So there's diversity, but now I'm discussing how islands technically can also be isolating to the point where it's just y'all right here. It is the same circle. There is actually no diversity. Like, it's diverse because y'all evolved to become different, but also no, because there's no one else to interact with but yourself. So these opposing forces are like the same thing, but like different. Back to the homeschool kids, which, now that I said incest, I'm not saying homeschool kids are doing that, but you can see like how homeschool kids, when they're homeschooled together, it's like y'all are really close. Like, normal siblings don't act like that, but technically they're not doing anything wrong. It's just more so like the way that they get socialized in their family. This is their normal. Right. Abusers isolating their victims, because when you isolate your victim, when that abuser does something, you can't tell someone about it to help you realize what they're doing is abuse, so that you will leave them. If you have no one to tell you, hey, this is not normal, get out, then you stay in the situation for longer. And again, like, it's just more so like the taboo-ness of like the closeness, and like, there's like a Prince song where he's like, I want to be your lover, I want to be your sister, I want to be everything, blah, blah, blah. That is too close. I am constantly reflecting on bastardizations of intimacy. You need diverse love. You need the love of a mother, the love of friendship, the love of like a romantic sexual partner. And these are supposed to be different, distinct types of love. And sometimes. Friendship and lovers, those lines can blur sometimes. Should a lover and a parent ever blend? No, right? So Prince is talking, right? It's like more so it is our world. There's nothing else, right? It's just me and you. It's us, the unit. There's no one else. And like the sun is self-sufficient, right? So he's like, I want to be your lover, want to be your sister, want to be your mother, want to be everything. It's just us. That's abusive. Like, it's like you're my whole world. You have no other world. You're in an island together. So if I ever do something fucked up, you won't have anyone else to go to, because I'm your friend, I'm your mother, I'm your lover, I'm everything in your world. The prison industrial system, specifically how like prisoners have their own culture, like they are isolated. And I do think this now pulls into like I said, no man is an island. Technically, you can make islands in any situation. You can make islands in landlocked areas, cults. In the case of prison culture, they have their own culture. The things that are seen as taboo in prison would not be seen as taboo outside. The things that would be seen as taboo outside could potentially not be seen as taboo inside, right? Like, I do think about how like pirates, when people are in prison, they may practice homosexuality, not because they're homosexuals, but because that's the culture. Like, that's the only way that you can take care of your sexual needs. Once you get out of prison, you probably aren't engaging in homosexuality if you're not a homosexual. I don't know why I'm using that word, gay. Let me just use gay. No, I like the word homosexual, right? And it's just more so like how it's like its own little bubble, its own little echo chamber, narcissism, connects to Leo. But yeah, in this case, they're in their own little bubble, their own little cultural context, right? So they are experiencing reality just a bit different because it's like a different isolated environment. Then on top of that, there's also solitary confinement. And I think this is like the most person, right? The most micro I can get about this. Solitary confinement is inhumane. Humans are social creatures. We genuinely do need to interact with other people. I say this as someone who consistently hermits. Like, it's like a spiritual practice where you go into yourself and you only really you barely interact with people. Like, you're a hermit. You live by yourself, right? As someone who hermits, I have gone through psychosis, right? That is not a completely safe thing to do if you really don't have like the right fortitudes in your own mind, which is like low-key saying like boundaries, right? Checks and balances. Capricorn. Not Capricorn, Saturn. Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. So in the case of like hermiting can be dangerous, like it can cause psychosis to the point where like people talk to themselves, right? Because it's like you do need that back and forth. You need that engagement, right? As someone who hermits, I have like at any moment, like maybe 3 voices in my head. The one who thought it first, the person who's gonna check, should I say it? And then the mouth. I like thinking in different perspectives. Technically, I could be seen as crazy. I do sort of kind of get it, but it's just like, no, I think I'm safe because I still talk to people, but I also talk to myself. Like, I generally know what I'm thinking. I generally have thought through what I'm thinking. Point being, you talk to yourself to create that sense of checks and balances, which is sort of kind of my point of no man is an island. You need that back and forth, someone to critique and check, but like, just like, to not isolate yourself so that when you start devolving or like denaturing, there's someone to pull you back and go, actually, no, keep form. You need that, right? Boundaries, restrictions, form, laws, right? You need that engagement with other people to make sure that you don't just spiral into nonsense. In the same way how like we can acknowledge person to person, you should not isolate yourself. I personally believe that communities, countries, land, like bigger, like from the micro to the macro, I don't think you should ever truly isolate yourself. No context elsewhere. And this is not me saying that you should overstep boundaries. I'm saying that if the boundaries are too restrictive, right, it can cause harm. Oh my God, I'm realizing the connections to Saturn as I'm talking. I brought up cults, but technically, like the one with the Kool-Aid that everyone like will quote or like acknowledge was like, oh my God, that was so bad. He was already isolating his cult members, isolating the victims when they were still in the USA. But like to double down, he decided to move them to South America, and that's where everyone ended up dying. And it's more so the fact that he's like, I need to be in my own echo chamber. And I did say like narcissism. Cults are headed by narcissists, right? So it's like connected to narcissism and echo chambers because Narcissus and Echo are from the same Greek myth. And actually, this does. I keep whacking them. I promise you, I'm not doing it on purpose. Papua New Guinea. Yellow Jackets is also another example of isolation, but not from an island, but in the middle of the jungle, right? I like Yellow Jackets because it is a study of the psyche. I used to say I love anthologies because I was using it as a synonym for anthropology. I like dark taboo stuff. Like I just want to watch people discuss the characterization of these people because it's like into the human psyche. But like The Walking Dead is an example of it, which is another one about cannibalism. As someone who doesn't like zombies, it's like this shit keeps following me. And Yellow Jackets. Okay, so I only watched 1 season of it. It is the isolation in the middle of nowhere. And they probably would have been fine. But you know, there was one bad apple, and it's not to like knock her. She's mentally ill and she didn't have the proper medication. There was one bad apple that started shifting the culture into this weird cult, right? And in fact, the fact that culture, agriculture, cult are like from the same root word, cult. I forgot what it means, but they are from the same root word. So culture and cult, right? And agriculture connecting to early communities like ancient river valleys, right? The transition from hunter-gatherers to agriculture. That's why culture and agriculture are connected, because now you have a unit, you have a community, all pretty much circulating around the food source that they have, agriculture. One bad apple spoiled the bunch, right? And they didn't have the checks and balances. And in fact, the voice of reason would consistently be hushed or silenced, which is what cults do. They figure out a way to isolate, right, the person who's like not in it, right, not really participating, and they make it a taboo to not be in it, to not get it, right? And then they isolate and sort of kind of like discard them. The first girl who died, the guy who lost his foot, they figure out a way to delegitimize them and isolate them. So within the isolation, there's more isolation. There's like circles and circles and circles. And actually, I was talking about how circles and karma and all that, but this one isn't really karmic, but technically everything is karma. It was really fun to watch them gradually slip into insanity. When it comes to Yellow Jackets, I do love the concept of was it real, was it fake? Because as much as it's like gender, religion, I even made a video about how color, are social constructs. I do believe religion is also a social construct, but then I also believe in like Tinkerbell theory. That stuff is real because we thought it and we decided it was real. Whatever was happening in that woods was real because they believed it was real. It was as real as them. Like religion, and I did discuss it in another video where it's like, God is us. God is the community. When you ask God for something and you get an answer through another person, that is God. That interaction is God. And like, since I'm talking about communities and isolation, right? When your community becomes sick, then you end up with sick gods. And often like a lot of gods, and this does have to do with human migration, right? Because often tribalism makes people think that we have to stay within our group. We can't go anywhere. And again, if one bad apple's in there, it spoils the bunch. Then this community is sick and they don't interact with nobody else to tell them, hey, this is not normal. This is not healthy, right? So then their gods start reflecting that. They have a sick, twisted, evil, vile God. So I love Yellow Jackets for also being a religion study as well. Like, oh, wait. Okay, so in my script, I did bring up Saturn, but I didn't realize. Sometimes I'd be forgetting that I write stuff. Like, again, I got a mind that's just pulling. And it's like, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if it's technically channel work. Like being able to like sit at something and then just like write. I did say this. This is why Saturn is important. I have a video that is actually blowing up. Thank you so much. I like put it out there because of the Manon situation. This is why Saturn is important, the checks and balances. You need that to keep form. That's why I think I say corset, because I understand that corsets were cosmetic. And I feel like that could lean into like fat phobia or ableism. And it probably does. Like, I am always trying to better be an ally for the disabled community. So like, I don't know how else to structure it, but I did say something about Saturn being a corset. And a corset, like a bra, is supposed to be adjustable. And also it's supposed to be suited to best fit your body. And in this case, best suited to fit your community. And that's why, even though I keep whacking them, there's a part of me that's like, even if I don't get it, if people in Papua New Guinea get it, and I keep saying Papua New Guinea like it's the whole country, it's just like certain isolated groups. If that makes sense to them and they are happy with it and it's technically not hurting anyone, that's the one. Because that's how we have Quran. Actually, my siblings said, hey, it is the part of zombie media where like they deteriorate from the disease that you might get Quran from eating human flesh. That's probably where that part comes from. If it makes sense to y'all, if that is the bra size for you, who am I to tell you, oh, you need to get a different bra? That's your bra. I'm not wearing that bra. Sometimes if you grow too big, but also if you shrink too small, which is the part about isolation, and also like more so the concepts of like, I said micro to macro because it's like often these things look the same, but like they're technically different, right? They reflect each other. They're not exactly apples to apples. I made it clear that I think that there's good and bad with everything, right? I discussed how, oh, these cultures look so weird and wacky because of their isolation and the lack of interaction. This is where I wanted to bring up like this psychological phenomenon. It was a study where people were shown Chinese characteristics who didn't speak Chinese or know Chinese, right? They were shown Chinese characters. Is this a good word or a bad word? And they would answer more likely bad when they hadn't seen that word before. But the more they would see that character, the more likely they were to say it was a good word. So in this study, it pretty much showed that the reason why we deem something good or bad isn't really because of like the morality of it, because like they're just characters. Like you actually have they're just symbols to you. You actually have no context of it, but more so the concept of like exposure and familiarity makes you familiar. Family makes you more likely to be fond of it. So in the case of islands having weird, wacky cultures, are their cultures weird and wacky because they evolved to be weird and wacky? Are they weird and wacky because you just haven't interacted with them, so you just aren't familiar with them, and that's why it looks off to you? But if you were to engage with them more, it's like just another thing. Because I'm going to be honest with you, kangaroos are just another thing at this point, right? Because we learned about them. But when kangaroos were discovered by the rest of the world, it became this new wacky, cool thing like aliens. So it was exciting, it was different. But for the Aboriginal people, it's just another thing. And I would even say in this modern day, kangaroos are just another thing. So that's sort of kind of my rebuttal, where it's just like, are they actually weird and wacky because they evolved to be weird and wacky? Sort of kind of yes, but also no, because like once you like, because now in this modern world, like we have globalization, and globalization does connect to Aquarius. The technology that has led us to be one unit, because we have our phones, we have social media, we have planes. In this age of globalization, technically nothing is weird, and the goal of Aquarius, or like the nature of Aquarius, understanding the interconnection of humanity, that we are all like one people, we are all the same. People bring up the age of Aquarius, and every time they say it, I don't think it's actually truly clicked. We are really starting to understand our technology, our humanity, our diversity, but also understanding the base level similarities with each other. When you attempt to look at your own culture as an outsider, like playing like 2020 vision, like you take yourself out of it and you look at your culture, you can find examples of things that would be seen as wacky and odd. I think sometimes we get it in our head that we are like the status quo everywhere, especially as an American. We think we're the status quo everywhere, but like if you were to ever like take a moment like to step back and really look at some of the things that we've normalized in our own culture, I can see how like someone would go, oh, that's normal? Yeah, it was, it is, and it might be. We're doing our own little thing in our own little world, in our own little community. And at least the fact that someone could look at our culture and go, oh, that's different, we don't do it that way, is really cool and healthy. And it doesn't mean that we have to change it. And it doesn't mean that they have to start adopting our cultural backgrounds that may be off or odd to them, right? It just means that they've observed it. And as long as it's not hurting anyone. I think that's actually my main point. I will also say the same concept of familiarity or mere exposure, like the theory of that, the familiarity principle. The thing about the familiarity principle is technically that can also be used to normalize bad behavior. This is like, I think, the root of what grooming is, where grooming and hazing. I think that is one of the main factors that makes grooming and hazing work. If you get exposed to something, even when it was vile and icky and wrong the first time, but you keep getting exposed and exposed and exposed to it, it's like, oh, it just becomes a normal, regular thing. The human mind is actually malleable. Like the things, like we have to be malleable for our survival. Like things that would destroy us if we kept like psychologically attacking us, right? The mind will go, oh, I have to treat this like it's normal or it will destroy me. I will die, right? Like I will like mutilate myself. I will like self-destruct if I cannot find a normal in this new environment. So that's why grooming and hazing will work, because the more you get exposed to something, the more it's like, I just have to roll with the punches. Like this is normal. This is now my environment. Like this is where I exist. And I probably will not put it in my thumbnail. Part of the reason why I got overwhelmed in Aquarius season with all the content that I could make was because everything was connecting. Islands, foreigners, grooming, conditioning, hazing, right? Aquarius connecting to technology. Aquarius, one of my videos, I was like, their minds, right? It like transcends normal people to some extent. Transcending, transhumanism, tech bros, again, islands, the files, right? The files. New stuff was coming out about the files, right? There was a photo that people didn't pay attention. I will find the video. There was something called evolutionary dynamics. And apparently, it's the study of how different parts of culture become normal. And I'm talking about, islands, isolation. Okay, I don't want to say it directly because I like to keep things lighthearted and fun. And this is what I was like, this stuff is overwhelming me. One more time. Islands, the files, transhumanism, humanism, evolution. How people are so adamant about like the next phase of humanity, the next evolutionary phase of humanity. What? I have a video where I said a Capricorn at its worst is capitalistic. I just said Leo at its worst is incestuous, right? Aquarius at its worst is everything wrong with the current tech bro, those connections, transhumanism, right? Aquarius season, all this stuff. There was a pastor talking about flood myths in Aquarius season. Aquarius is connected to flood myths. And this is where I said it and I didn't really get it. In my last video about aliens and media, I talked about ancient river valleys, how humanity often builds itself around a river. When you build around a river, what happens? Eventually, that river floods. Oh my God. Aquarius, connected to technological advancements, right? So community, creating technological advancements because now they have a hub. Now they have a culture. They have agriculture near a river. Is connected to flood myths because rivers flood. Again, I don't know if what I do is channel work. At some point, it literally will make you feel sick because it's like, I don't know how else to like compute this and like, and this is where I was like, I'm actually, oh, I don't think I ever clarified this. I am not an Aquarius. 111 while I'm saying this. Oh my God, it's channel work. 111 while I say this, right? I am not an Aquarius. I have Aquarian numbers. And again, I brought up echo chambers. Also, we're in the year of one. You should watch my video, year of one, because that's where I was talking about like narcissism and echo chambers and whatnot. When you isolate yourself, you create a little bubble for yourself. It's like an echo chamber, but also like maybe a positive version of it is quarantine. But sometimes it's like quarantine, keeping a clean place, a sterile place, keep it still sterile. But sometimes a quarantine is containing an illness and it will fester and fester and fester. And I said bubble, like a bubble pop, right? I also thought pimple, but pimple might not be right. But like popping that bubble, you know, it can be important. Sometimes I do think you're supposed to pop your pimple. I could be wrong. Okay. I'm not a dermatologist. And then also it sort of kind of goes back to the Japanese flag about how it's like exploding. I also do think that there's a level of like the opposite is the same thing, like an explosion. What about an implosion? And I do think this might connect closer to the motifs that I'm going to bring up when I talk about Leo, but it's more so the concept of things folding into themselves until it collapses and implodes, which a star will either explode or implode at the end of its life, right? And vacuums. Vacuum can either be like sucking in an implosion, or a vacuum can be like in the science where they create a vacuum, like they have a case and they create an air vacuum to do some science project. So there's like two types of vacuums. There's something there. I don't think I'm yet ready to explore that. I talked about innovation and I talked about being in your own bubble. Aquarius is an air sign. And in fact, the concept of an airhead being smart, and then the connection to aliens, which I've also discussed. Honestly, I do think this is what plays into why people don't like Aquariuses, because I often think people forget that innovators are not liked before it really clicks that this was the next step, right? I think often Aquariuses are the one to bring up, oh, this is not working. This needs to shift. This needs to change. This needs to evolve. And then people are like, why can't you just go with the flow? Like it's worked before, it's working now. Like, let it just be. Why do you have to critique everything? And Aquarius is an innovator, and often innovators are not liked until the next step has been finally realized, and then everyone acts like they've always been on board with it. Again, I think tech bros think that that's what they are. I think that's what they think. I think that's why they keep pushing it. Also, bystander effect. I think Aquariuses are not victims. Aquariuses are not victims to the bystander effect. The bystander effect is when something atrocious is happening, but because no one is reacting, you're not inclined to react. It's like also connected to social proofing, where it's like you're only going to behave the way how everyone is behaving. And because no one sees it as their responsibility to make a move when something bad is happening, no one makes a move. And then they just watch the crime or the victimization happen and no one moves. And Aquariuses are not Aquarius, like the energy that Aquariuses have, are not inclined to be a bystander. If they see that something is wrong, they will call it out. And again, because it's like they're not going with the flow, often that can be like, oh, they're the hero, because it's like they stopped something from happening because they saw a problem and they went for it. But then also it could be, no, like that was supposed to happen. That wasn't your business. Why did you self-insert yourself? Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed. You should share with a friend and you should comment. I really enjoy comments. I literally just talked about echo chambers. I don't want to just be in a room talking to myself. I want to know what you thought. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you like this one part but think I missed a point in this part? I would love to hear your point of view. And you should follow me. I'm trying to get to 500 because I'm trying to get to 1,000 because I'm trying to get monetized. And then also follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.